For over 3 centuries, the bones buried beneath America's oldest black cemeteries told a story that nobody bothered to listen to. They lay in the earth, silent witnesses to centuries of bondage, labor, heartbreak, and resilience. And then, in a moment that feels almost like poetic justice, scientists decided to finally ask these bones what they had been trying to tell us all along. What they discovered didn't just illuminate the past, it rewrote it. This is the story of how DNA extracted from ancient graves in Maryland, New York, Virginia, and South Carolina is fundamentally changing our understanding of black history in America. It's a story about ancestors coming home, about lost families being reunited across centuries, and about the incredible power of science to restore what slavery worked so hard to destroy. In the summer of 2023, researchers from Harvard University, the Smithsonian Institution, and the genetic testing company 23andMe published findings that made headlines most people didn't notice. They had analyzed DNA from 27 people buried in a cemetery at Kataken Furnace in Maryland, a place few Americans have ever heard of. And what they found was extraordinary. They identified nearly 42,000 living genetic. That moment finally came in 2023. Researchers at Harvard Medical School, led by population geneticist Edwin Harney, decided to extract DNA from those bones and compare it to millions of people in 23andMe's database, a company where nearly 10 million people have voluntarily submitted their genetic information with permission to have it used for research. When they uploaded the ancient DNA from Kataken Furnace into this massive database, something remarkable happened. The algorithm began finding matches. One match, then dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. The 27 individuals from that cemetery had children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Those descendants had more children, and those children had more children. Over 2.5 centuries, those bloodlines spread and multiplied. They moved to different counties, different states. Some stayed in Maryland, clustered in certain regions where descendants of the furnace workers clearly remained. Others traveled north to Pennsylvania and New York. Some went south. Some went west. They married people of different backgrounds. Their descendants became doctors and teachers and shopkeepers and lawyers and artists. They built lives. They built families. They built America. And they had no idea that their ancestors had toiled in a hellhole of an iron furnace in 1790s Maryland. They had no idea they were connected to enslaved people. They had no idea that their great-great-great-grandmother or grandfather had been forced to do back-breaking labor in a primitive forge, making iron that would be used for weapons and tools in the Revolutionary War. That's because the records were never there to tell them. Slavery made sure their history vanished. But DNA tells a different story. DNA remembers. The genetic code passed down through mothers and fathers across generations carries the truth that documentation cannot erase. So when researchers compared those 27 people from Kataken Furnace to the genetic database, they found that many of them traced their ancestry back to West Africa, specifically to regions where the Wolof and Congo peoples lived. These weren't random Africans. These were people from specific places, specific cultures, specific families. The Wolof people come from what is now Senegal and Guinea. The Congo people come from what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo, Angola, and surrounding regions. The research also found that many of these individuals carried European ancestry, primarily from Great Britain and Ireland. This wasn't surprising. It reflected the brutal history of sexual violence during slavery, where enslaved women were raped by white men. But it's crucial information. It's part of the complete picture of who these people were. They were not simple categories in someone's racial taxonomy. They were complex human beings with multiple ancestral origins. One of the people directly involved in this research is named Fatima Jackson. She's a descendant of someone who worked at Kataken Furnace. For most of her life, Fatima knew very little about her family history. Her ancestors' stories were lost. When she heard about this genetic research project, she decided to participate. She took a DNA test, hoping to learn whether she and her daughters were related to any of the furnace workers buried in that cemetery. And then, through the genetic matches, she discovered the connection. She was related to the dead. Fatima describes it as finding a missing piece of her identity. For Black Americans, this kind of discovery is more than academic. It's not just interesting historical trivia. It's personal. It's intimate. It's about understanding your own existence, your place in the world, your connection to a struggle that shaped everything about the society you live in today. The furnace itself was a brutal place to work. Physical analysis of the bones from Kataken revealed signs of the torture that labor inflicted on human bodies. Workers suffered from nutritional deficiencies. They carried injuries. They showed evidence of disease. They bore the physical marks of backbreaking labor. Many of them were probably very young when they worked there. Bone analysis can sometimes reveal age at death, and the researchers found that some of the people buried in that cemetery were teenagers. Some might have been younger. Children labored at Kataken Furnace. Children died there, and their graves went unmarked. But here's what makes this research truly revolutionary. The researchers didn't just publish their findings and move on. They didn't just turn their discoveries into a prestigious journal article and consider the job done. Instead, they partnered with the descendant community. They worked with local organizations like the Kataken Furnace Historical Society and the African American Resources Cultural and Heritage Society of Frederick County. They treated the people buried in that cemetery as having dignity and agency, even in death. They recognized that these bones belonged to a community, not to scientists. This approach is actually relatively new in the field of archaeology. For a very long time, researchers treated human remains as objects of study, resources to be examined and extracted, particularly when those remains were from indigenous peoples or black people or other marginalized communities. There was often little respect for the dead or their descendants. Remains were moved from place to place. They were kept in museums and university labs with no permission from descendants. They were treated as curiosities rather than as sacred ancestors. The most famous and troubling example of this disrespect happened right in Manhattan, at the African Burial Ground in Lower Manhattan. In 1991, as construction crews began digging the foundation for a new federal office building in the financial district, they uncovered human skeletons. At first, officials tried to dismiss the finds and keep construction moving, but as more and more bones were unearthed, it became clear that they had discovered something massive: America's oldest and largest African American cemetery. Approximately 15,000 people were buried across 6.5 acres of what is now Lower Manhattan. 419 individuals were carefully documented by archaeologists in one section of the site. These people had been buried there between 1712 and 1795. They were enslaved people and free black people living in colonial New York. They had been buried with care, many of them in wooden coffins, many shrouded in cloth. A few graves contained distinctive African artifacts, waist beads, filed teeth, suggesting that African cultural practices persisted even in bondage. These graves told stories of resilience and connection to homeland, but the federal government wanted to build a building. Dead people didn't matter as much as concrete and steel and office space. The pressure to keep construction on schedule was intense. Archaeological teams worked frantically to remove remains before the bulldozers came. They found about 390 burials before construction absolutely had to begin. But in their rush, they made mistakes. They destroyed about 20 burials using old maps that turned out to be inaccurate. Workers dug where skeletons lay, pulverizing bones. They moved remains with machinery rather than careful hands. And then something happened that revealed just how little respect was being shown to the dead. Skeletal remains from the African Burial Ground showed up at Lehman College wrapped in newspaper. Not carefully boxed, not documented, just wrapped in newspaper like garbage and shipped to a classroom. The black community in New York erupted in protest. Activists occupied the site. They held prayer vigils. They demanded that construction stop and that the cemetery be treated with dignity. Mayor David Dinkins created a committee to address the crisis. Congress appropriated $3 million for a redesign of the building that would preserve the burial ground. The planned 34-story tower was reduced to 30 stories. The footprint of the building was changed to protect the cemetery. And critically, the research project was given to Howard University, one of the nation's historically black universities. Dr. Michael Blakey, an African-American bioarchaeologist, became the scientific director. Blakey and his team revolutionized how archaeological research on human remains should be conducted. They worked with the descendants and community members. They were transparent about their methods. They treated the people buried there as ancestors worthy of honor and respect. This wasn't just good ethics. This was good science. The African Burial Ground Research Project became the most sophisticated bioarchaeological study ever conducted in America. The lessons learned at the African Burial Ground in Manhattan in the 1990s informed how researchers approached Kataken Furnace decades later. By 2023, the field had evolved. When Harney and her team presented their findings about the 42,000 genetic relatives, they did so with full community involvement. They shared their data. They made clear that if descendants wanted to know whether they were related to these ancient people, they could take a DNA test themselves and find out. This raises fascinating and complicated questions. If 23andMe contacts someone and tells them that they are genetically related to an enslaved person who died in 1830, what does that mean to them? What does it mean to learn that your grandmother's grandmother's grandmother was forced into bondage? What does it mean to learn where your family actually comes from? These aren't abstract questions. They're being asked right now by thousands of people. The research also revealed something else profound. Living descendants are actually clustered in Maryland. The highest concentration of genetic matches to the Kataken individuals are from Maryland, suggesting that descendants of these people never left, or they left and came back, or their relatives stayed behind. Whatever the reason, the family connections persisted across generations in the very area where their ancestors were enslaved and buried. There's something emotionally significant about that. These people are still there. They're still connected to the land. They're still living in the same county where their ancestors died. Similar research is now underway at other historic black burial grounds across America. In Williamsburg, Virginia, archaeologists excavated graves at the site of the First Baptist Church, one of the oldest black churches in the nation, founded in 1776 by free and enslaved black people. Scientists analyzed remains from 3 men buried there and confirmed they were members of the congregation in the early 19th century. DNA and bone analysis revealed that one individual was a young black man between 16 and 18 years old, standing 5 foot 4 inches tall. His grave contained a clothing button made from animal bone, still bearing cotton fibers. These material details bring that person to life. He becomes real. He becomes a human being, not just a skeleton. In Charleston, South Carolina, researchers are examining remains from another historic black cemetery. In St. Mary's, Maryland, another project is underway. And in the Harlem neighborhood of New York City, a significant archaeological project got underway in 2024. From June 2024 through September 2025, teams excavated the Harlem African Burial Ground at 126th Street and 2nd Avenue. This cemetery operated from the 1600s onward, back when the area was still called New Harlem by the Dutch colonists. Archaeologists established the complete distribution of human remains across the site. They recovered remains alongside artifacts, buttons, beads, pipes, pottery shards. This material culture tells stories about how these people lived, what they valued, how they decorated themselves, how they ate. The remains and artifacts recovered from Harlem are currently in climate-controlled laboratory space in New York City, where they will begin detailed analysis in early 2026. Eventually, DNA will be extracted from these bones too. Eventually, 23andMe databases and other genetic tools will be used to find the descendants of people buried in Harlem in the 1700s and 1800s. Thousands more people will discover they have an ancestor connected to that burial ground. Thousands more black Americans will suddenly have roots. They'll have names. They'll have places of origin. They'll have a story to tell about who they are and where they came from. The Oort cloud is estimated to extend anywhere from 2,000 astronomical units to 100,000 astronomical units from the sun. 1 AU is the Earth-Sun distance, about 150 million kilometers. Voyager 1 at 1 light day is at about 173 AU from the sun. That means it's reached well into the region where we believe the Oort cloud begins, but it hasn't come close to reaching the outer edge. Voyager 1 has traveled nearly 50 years at its incredible speed, covering billions of kilometers, and it's still only partway through what scientists believe constitutes the solar system. It's a humbling realization about the actual scale of our cosmic neighborhood. To put this another way, if the entire solar system were the size of Earth, Voyager 1 would only be a few hundred kilometers away from the surface. The Oort cloud extends far into the distance, encompassing a region dozens of times larger than the current reach of Voyager 1. This mysterious region, hypothesized by Dutch astronomer John Oort in 1950, remains largely unexplored. We don't know if it exists exactly as theorized. We don't know what objects populate it. We don't know what role it plays in the broader dynamics of our galaxy. But we know Voyager 1 is heading toward it, and if it survives long enough, it might actually pass through this region, gathering data about objects and phenomena we've never directly observed. The nearest star system to Earth is Alpha Centauri, about 437 light-years away. Voyager 1 at 1 light day is about 0.0027 light-years away from Earth. That means the nearest star is almost 1,600 times farther away than Voyager 1 is from us, and yet Voyager 1 is already the most distant object humanity has ever created. At its current speed, maintaining its velocity because there's no friction in space to slow it down, Voyager 1 won't reach another star for about 40,000 years. In 40,000 years, it will pass closer to the star AC plus 79,388 than it ever will to Earth. But that's 40,000 years in the future. By then, our civilization might be completely transformed. The people building Voyager 1 in the 1970s are long gone. Everyone alive when it was launched is dead or dying. And yet this machine, this simple collection of metal and circuits and radioisotopes, will still be flying through space, carrying a record of Earth with it. The Golden Record was curated by Carl Sagan, one of the greatest scientists of the 20th century. He understood this mission wasn't just about gathering scientific data. It was about making a statement about humanity, about who we are, about what we value. The record includes sounds from Earth, thunder, rain, wind, whale calls, greetings in multiple languages, mathematical formulas, the work of Bach and Beethoven. It's an attempt to distill human civilization into a single artifact that might speak to an unknown intelligence in a language that transcends words. The Voyager missions were part of something NASA called the Voyager Interstellar Mission. After the spacecraft left the solar system, the mission continued, focused on exploring the interstellar medium, gathering data about the region of space between stars. This was never going to be a glamorous mission. There weren't going to be dramatic flybys of new worlds. There weren't going to be spectacular discoveries of alien life or new planets. It was going to be slow, methodical science, taking measurements of particle density, magnetic fields, cosmic radiation. But it was valuable science. It was science that would help us understand our place in the galaxy. In the years leading up to November 2026, NASA has been carefully managing Voyager 1's power budget, deciding which instruments to keep online and which to shut down. They've shut down the LECP instrument, as mentioned. They've powered down various scientific systems to conserve power. The spacecraft is operating in what you might call life support mode, prioritizing survival over science. The spacecraft will power down its plasma science instrument in 2026. Soon after that, if the power continues to decline, the cosmic ray instrument will have to be shut down as well. Eventually, if nothing changes, even the communication systems will have to be powered down. And then Voyager 1 will truly be alone, a silent messenger drifting through interstellar space, carrying Earth's message with no way to transmit it, no way to share what it's measuring or experiencing. But engineers at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory have been working on innovative solutions to extend Voyager 1's operational life. They're testing something called the Big Bang, a technique to temporarily shut down and restart spacecraft systems in a specific sequence, potentially reviving instruments that have been turned off due to power constraints. The tests are scheduled for 2026 on Voyager 2 first, which has slightly more power available and is closer to Earth, making it a lower risk test candidate. If the tests succeed, they might be able to use the same technique on Voyager 1 to potentially turn the LECP instrument back on, or to extend the operational life of other systems. It's an extraordinary amount of effort being expended to keep a spacecraft alive that was supposed to stop working decades ago. But that's what Voyager 1 means to us. It's not just a machine, it's not just a satellite gathering data. It's a symbol of human capability, human ambition, human curiosity. It's a physical manifestation of our desire to explore, to understand, to reach beyond ourselves. The Voyager missions are some of the few human achievements that we can point to and say, unambiguously, this will outlast civilization. This will still be flying through space millions of years from now, long after Earth is gone, long after the sun has died, carrying its message and its data into an unknown future. The moment when Voyager 1 reaches 1 light day distance from Earth is not dramatic in the way that a planetary encounter is dramatic. There's no sudden burst of radiation. There's no spectacular image. There's no new discovery being announced. It's a quiet milestone, marked by calculation and verification by NASA's Deep Space Network confirming the distance through careful measurements and mathematical precision. But quiet doesn't mean insignificant. In fact, the quietness makes it more profound. It's a reminder that space is vast beyond our comprehension, that our greatest achievements are still tiny and fragile against the scale of the cosmos, that the messages we send to our machines have to travel for days to reach them. What makes this moment especially significant right now in 2026 is the context of where we are as a civilization. We have private spacecraft now. We have plans for Mars colonies. We're talking about mining asteroids and establishing off-world settlements. We're so focused on the next frontier, the next leap, that we sometimes forget about what we've already done. Voyager 1 exists in a kind of blind spot in our cultural awareness. Most people have never heard of it. Most people don't know it's still operating. Most people don't understand that we still have a functioning spacecraft that we built 50 years ago that's still sending back data, that's still doing science. And in November 2026, when it reaches 1 light day distance, most people probably won't even notice. It won't trend on social media. It won't make the headlines. Most of the world will keep going about their business, unaware that humanity just achieved another first. But that moment matters. It matters because it represents something fundamental about our relationship with space and distance and exploration. It matters because it's real. It's not theoretical. It's not a prediction. It's an actual spacecraft with actual instruments, measuring actual phenomena at an actual distance from Earth. And we built it. Humans built it. Engineers designed it. Scientists conceived of the experiments. Workers assembled it. And now, nearly half a century later, it's still out there, still working, still talking to us across the vast emptiness of space. When that November morning arrives, when the precise moment comes that Voyager 1 crosses the 1 light day threshold, something will have changed. Not in the physical universe. The spacecraft will feel no different. The instruments will measure no change. But in the human experience of space, something fundamental will shift. We will have achieved a distance so great that even the fastest thing in the universe needs a full day to bridge it. We will have sent a machine so far from home that we can barely have a conversation with it anymore. And we will have done it with technology that's older than personal computers, powered by fuel that decays predictably, maintained by engineers who were children when it was launched. Voyager 1 is not the future of space exploration. It's the past. It's a relic of an earlier era when we thought big and dreamed boldly and sent machines out into the cosmos with hope that they would survive and continue to teach us. But it's also proof of concept. It's proof that if you build something well enough, if you plan carefully enough, if you design with quality and redundancy, it can outlast almost anything. It can outlast fashion. It can outlast technology. It can outlast the people who built it. And it can keep working, keep doing its job, keep sending back data about the universe long after the world that created it has moved on to new priorities. So on November 18th, 2026, when Voyager 1 reaches 1 light day distance from Earth, take a moment to think about what that means. Think about the fact that we have a machine at a distance so vast that light itself takes 24 hours to cross it. Think about the engineers who are still operating it, still keeping it alive, still trying to extend its operational life by years or decades. Think about the fact that in 40,000 years, this spacecraft will be closer to another star than it ever was to Earth. Think about the golden record it's carrying, the message from humanity to whatever the future might bring. And think about the fundamental truth that this moment represents. We are small, the universe is vast, but we have the capability to reach out and touch that vastness, to send our machines forth into the darkness, and to listen as they report back what they find. That's what Voyager 1's 1 light day milestone truly represents. Not just a distance milestone, but a moment where we acknowledge how far we've come and how much farther we still have to go.